What if trusting those meant to guide you could cost you everything, even your humanity? This is the story of Stella Johnson, an 18-year-old who turned her pain into a weapon, forever changing the lives of 5 educators and a whole community. This isn't just a story of revenge. It's a tale of betrayal, justice, and a chilling question. How far would you go if the world failed you? What Stella did shocked everyone, but the truth behind her actions will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about trust, power, and revenge. Welcome to True Crime Stories Unfold, where we explore both the told and untold stories that shape our world. Today, we're diving into the chilling case of Stella Johnson. Please make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated. Trust me, you won't want to miss the stories we've got coming up. Now, let's uncover the truth behind Roxbury High School's darkest chapter. Stella Johnson seemed like any other high school senior on the surface. She was bright, beautiful, and full of promise. Her warm brown skin glowed under the sunlight. Her expressive eyes seemed to hold endless dreams, and her radiant smile could light up any room. But behind that smile was a girl carrying a burden few could imagine. Every day, Stella faced an unspoken struggle. She had always wondered why her life seemed different from her peers. Why did she need to take those daily medications? Why did she often catch her mother whispering with the family doctor in tones laced with worry? Stella's life was filled with questions that no one had ever answered, until one fateful evening. It was just another quiet night in their small Boston apartment when her mother, Evelyn, called her into the bedroom. Evelyn sat on the edge of the bed, clutching a photograph with trembling hands. Her voice broke as she said, "Stella, there's something you need to know." What followed shattered Stella's world. Evelyn revealed the painful truth about her past, how she had been brutally assaulted 19 years ago, an attack that left her scarred for life and pregnant with Stella. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. When you were born, we found out you were HIV positive. Evelyn confessed, tears streaming down her face. "I've kept it a secret all these years to protect you from the stigma. But you're old enough now to know the truth." The weight of this revelation was almost too much to bear. Stella felt as if her world had collapsed around her. Everything suddenly made sense. The medications, the hushed conversations, the absence of her father. But understanding didn't make the pain any less. Stella's thoughts spiraled as she grappled with this new reality. For years, she had felt different, isolated, as though she was watching life happen from behind a glass wall. Relationships, teenage milestones, carefree moments, they had all felt just out of reach. Now, she understood why. But the understanding brought with it a cold, simmering anger. Evelyn Johnson was a woman who had faced more hardship than most could imagine. Despite her traumatic past, she had poured all her love and energy into raising Stella. She had sacrificed her own happiness and endured the stigma surrounding her assault and her daughter's condition. Her silence wasn't born out of shame, but of fierce protectiveness. She wanted to shield Stella from the cruel judgments of the world, hoping to give her daughter the chance at a normal life, or as close to one as possible. Evelyn's revelation wasn't just a moment of confession. It was a moment of raw vulnerability. She looked at Stella with eyes filled with both sorrow and hope, silently pleading for her daughter's understanding. Stella's response was calm, almost eerily so. She said, "I understand, Mama. Thank you for telling me." But deep inside, Stella was far from understanding. Her heart was a storm of emotions, confusion, betrayal, and a dangerous resolve forming in the shadows. The bond between mother and daughter had always been strong, but this revelation tested it like never before. Evelyn's love was steadfast, but Stella's trust had been shaken to its core. And as Stella processed the truth, a chilling determination began to take root. a determination that would soon set her on a path of no return. In the days and weeks that followed her mother's revelation, Stella began to see the world, and herself, through a different lens. The vibrant, bustling halls of Roxbury High School, which had once seemed filled with possibility, now felt suffocating and sinister. Stella began to notice things she had previously overlooked. The way certain teachers' eyes lingered too long, the subtle touches that seemed accidental but weren't, the whispered rumors of misconduct that floated through the student body like a dark cloud. Each observation fed into her growing sense of anger and injustice. These were adults, people in positions of power and trust, and yet they were taking advantage of their roles, preying on the vulnerabilities of the very students they were supposed to protect. Stella couldn't look away. She couldn't unsee what she now saw so clearly, and with every passing day, her resolve hardened. She would no longer be a victim. But Stella's determination was not without its inner conflict. She knew the path she was considering was dangerous, even wrong. Part of her longed to confront these teachers openly, to call out their behavior and demand justice. But another part of her, the part that had been shaped by years of secrecy and stigma, felt that justice wouldn't come so easily. She needed to take matters into her own hands. Late at night, as she lay awake in bed, Stella's mind would race with thoughts of her plan. She felt a mix of excitement and dread, of triumph and disgust. She knew she was treading a fine line between justice and revenge, but in her mind, the end justified the means. Stella's plan began to take shape. She identified 5 individuals who had crossed the line, either through their actions or their abuse of power. Mr. Jameson, the English teacher with a charming smile and wandering eyes. Stella had always felt uneasy under his gaze, and now she understood why. He was known for offering extra help after school, but his motives were far from academic. Coach Williams, the young, attractive basketball coach who had a reputation for getting too close to his female players. He prided himself on his professionalism, but Stella had seen enough to know that his boundaries were paper-thin. Miss Rivera, the art teacher, whose gaze lingered just a little too long during class. While her attraction to women was no secret, her inability to separate personal feelings from her professional role made her a target in Stella's eyes. Mr. Okafor, the history teacher, battling personal frustrations at home. Stella had overheard his arguments with his wife and knew he was vulnerable to manipulation. Principal Harris, the authoritative figure at the helm of the school. Rumors of his inappropriate relationships with students had circulated for years, but nothing had ever been proven. Stella was determined to change that. Each of these individuals had their own vulnerabilities, their own weaknesses, and Stella, with her newfound determination and sense of purpose, was ready to exploit them all. She saw her beauty and charisma not as gifts, but as weapons, tools she could use to bring these people to justice in her own way. Stella's plan was methodical, calculated, and chillingly effective. Her first target was Mr. Jameson, the English teacher who had always paid her a little too much attention. Stella played the part of a struggling student, staying after class to ask for help with her essays. She dressed modestly at first, building his trust and ensuring he didn't suspect her intentions. Then, as their interactions became more frequent, she began to push boundaries. Subtle touches on his arm, compliments on his teaching, and eventually, lingering eye contact that suggested more than gratitude. It didn't take long for Mr. Jameson to cross the line. One afternoon, Stella stayed after school to review an essay. As they sat in his office, she leaned in closer than necessary, her knee brushing against his. "I really appreciate all your help, Mr. Jameson," she said softly. He hesitated, visibly torn between his professional ethics and his growing attraction to her. But in the end, he succumbed, kissing her in a moment of weakness. Stella had him right where she wanted. Next was Coach Williams. Stella joined the basketball team, despite her lack of interest in the sport. During practices, she wore the shortest shorts allowed, bending over unnecessarily and accidentally bumping into him during drills. At first, he ignored her advances, maintaining a professional distance. But Stella was persistent. One day, after practice, she asked for extra coaching. Alone in the gym, she appealed to his ego, praising his skills and hinting that she wanted to learn more than just basketball. The tension between them snapped, and he gave in. Miss Rivera was a different challenge. Stella knew she had to be subtle, as Miss Rivera's attraction to women was known but unspoken in their interactions. Stella began staying after school to work on art projects, asking for feedback and guidance. One evening, she unveiled a self-portrait she had painted, a nude, rendered with startling realism. Miss Rivera was visibly uncomfortable, but Stella pressed on, stepping closer and whispering, "Don't you think art should be bold?" Miss Rivera's resolve crumbled, and Stella seduced her. Mr. Okafor was perhaps the easiest to manipulate. Stella had overheard his frustrations about his marriage and used them to her advantage. She feigned an intense interest in history, staying after class to discuss topics in depth. One day, she brought up his personal struggles, pretending to empathize with his pain. "You deserve to feel appreciated," she told him, placing a hand on his arm. The physical contact was enough to break his composure, and he crossed the line. Finally, there was Principal Harris. He was the most cautious of all her targets, aware of the risks involved. Stella deliberately got sent to his office multiple times, each time playing the role of a contrite student seeking his guidance. She appealed to his ego, praising his leadership and hinting at her admiration for him. One evening, she stayed late, pretending to need help with a school project. Alone in his office, she made her move, leaning in close and whispering, "You're the reason this school thrives." His resistance wavered, and he succumbed. At first, Stella reveled in her success. Each of her targets believed their encounters with her would remain secret, and she watched as guilt and stress began to take their toll. Mr. Jameson became jumpy and distracted in class, avoiding eye contact with students. Coach Williams threw himself into grueling workouts, as if trying to punish himself for his actions. Miss Rivera's once vibrant art classes became subdued, her enthusiasm replaced by quiet melancholy. Mr. Okafor's lectures lost their passion, becoming dry recitations delivered with little emotion. And Principal Harris, once a commanding presence in the school hallways, now seemed to shrink into himself, avoiding interaction whenever possible. But as Stella watched their lives unravel, she began to feel the weight of her actions. The satisfaction she had once felt was replaced by unease, and she started to question whether her revenge was truly justice or simply another form of cruelty. The turning point came when she overheard her targets discussing medical tests and results in hushed tones. Words like clinic and positive sent a chill down her spine, and she realized the full extent of what she had done. It wasn't just their reputations she had destroyed. She had potentially ruined their lives. The weight of her actions crashed down on Stella like a tidal wave. She had overheard snippets of conversation among the teachers, whispers about clinics, test results, and consultations with doctors. The word positive seemed to echo in her mind, each repetition a hammer blow of guilt. She ducked into the nearest bathroom, her hands shaking as she clutched the edges of the sink. The world felt as though it were spinning, her reflection in the mirror warped by the tears streaming down her face. In that moment, Stella saw herself clearly for the first time. Her revenge had not brought the closure she'd hoped for. Instead, it had created a web of pain and destruction that ensnared not only her targets, but their families, their students, and their communities. She had set out to expose their wrongdoings, but in doing so, she had crossed a line she could never uncross. Summoning every ounce of courage she had left, Stella made her way to the principal's office. She stood outside the door for what felt like an eternity, her heart pounding in her chest. Finally, she knocked. When Principal Harris opened the door, his expression shifted from surprise to concern as he took in her tear-streaked face. "We need to talk," she said, her voice trembling. "About everything." Stella confessed everything. She told the principal, the staff, and eventually the police about her HIV status, her mother's assault, and the elaborate plan she had executed against her targets. Her words spilled out in a torrent, each confession leaving her feeling more exposed and vulnerable. "I wanted them to feel the pain I've felt my whole life," she admitted, "but I see now that I've only made things worse." The fallout was swift and severe. Stella was arrested on multiple charges, including endangerment and statutory rape. As a minor, she was sentenced to time in a juvenile detention center, where she was required to undergo mandatory counseling and participate in community service focused on HIV education and awareness. The 5 educators faced their own consequences. Mr. Jameson and Coach Williams lost their teaching licenses and were publicly shamed. Miss Rivera was suspended and required to undergo extensive counseling before she could return to teaching. Mr. Okafor received a formal reprimand, but was allowed to continue teaching under strict supervision. Principal Harris, the most senior figure, was forced to resign amidst mounting pressure from the community and the school board. Beyond the legal and professional repercussions, the scandal sent shockwaves through Roxbury High School. Parents demanded stricter policies on teacher-student interactions, and the school implemented comprehensive reforms to protect students from future exploitation. For many, the case served as a wake-up call, exposing the cracks in a system that had allowed such abuses to occur unchecked. For Stella, the road to redemption was long and arduous. She threw herself into her counseling sessions and community service, determined to use her experiences to educate others and break down the stigma surrounding HIV. While she could never undo the harm she had caused, she hoped to prevent others from making the same mistakes. The story of Stella Johnson became a cautionary tale, a complex and painful reminder of the devastating consequences of secrecy, stigma, and unchecked power dynamics. In the end, it wasn't just about revenge or justice. It was about confronting the darkness within ourselves and finding a way to move forward, no matter how difficult the path. 5 years after the events at Roxbury High School, Stella Johnson stood in front of a room filled with young adults at a community center. She was no longer the broken girl she had once been, but a woman on a mission. With pamphlets in one hand and a microphone in the other, she shared her story. Her voice was steady, her gaze direct, as she described her journey. If Stella's story moved you, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to True Crime Stories Unfold. Your support helps us continue to bring you the most captivating and thought-provoking true crime stories from around the world. Our next case delves into the chilling tale of deception and betrayal in a quiet neighborhood, a story that will make you question the very foundation of trust. Turn on your notifications so you won't miss it. We want to hear from you. What lessons do you take from Stella's story? How would you have handled such overwhelming pain and betrayal? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation going, because your insights can spark awareness and change. We value your voices. Together, we're building a community that doesn't just listen to stories, but learns from them. Stay tuned for more gripping true crime stories, and thank you for being part of True Crime Stories Unfold. Until next time, stay safe and stay curious.